Welcome back everybody, I'm Nick930 and this is my final review for the upcoming game from Ubisoft Quebec, Immortals Fenyx Rising. Immortals Fenyx Rising, formerly known as Gods and Monsters, is an open-world action-adventure game with fast-paced melee combat, puzzle solving, and a beautiful stylized art direction. In it, you'll explore a vast, open-ended area inspired heavily by Greek mythology, while fighting powerful enemies and discovering new gear to improve on your character, all in an effort to help save the Greek world from destruction. The game shares a lot of similarities with a certain open-world adventure from 2017, but I'll save that comparison for later this week. For today, let's take a deep dive into just this game so that you have a better idea of what it's all about, including things that I think work well and things that I think could be improved. So first up, let's take a spoiler-free look at the story. In Immortals Fenyx Rising, you play as a custom character, either male or female, named Phoenix, who's washed up on the shores of the mainland after a mysterious event turns every mortal nearby into stone. It's soon revealed that Typhon, one of the more dangerous titans, has escaped Zeus's imprisonment and is the source of all the evil plaguing the land, and it's up to Phoenix to save the gods and put a stop to Typhon's reign. It's a common open-world narrative structure, but I do appreciate the uniquely lighthearted tone that the developers decided to go with. A bulk of the game is narrated by Prometheus and Zeus, which, if you're familiar with Greek mythology, is a pretty unlikely pair-up. And more often than not, Zeus will hilariously interrupt Prometheus' rich tale only to interject and break the fourth wall. It works surprisingly well, and it's one of the clearest indications that this isn't your typical open-world Ubisoft game. What I feel doesn't work quite as well, though, is Phoenix herself, or rather, himself. Almost every line delivered by this character is cringeworthy and unnecessary, either trying to deliver a joke and falling flat, or just stating the obvious in a way that feels redundant. I almost feel that leaving this character completely mute would have worked better instead. Thankfully, the female variant of Phoenix is actually tolerable. The chosen voice actress seems to fit the character design a bit more, and the delivery feels more consistent, though the written lines themselves are still fairly cheesy. And this really just boils down to the general style of the game itself. Immortals really doesn't want to take itself too seriously, and it's constantly reminding you of this design choice around every corner. Phoenix will open chests in the goofiest possible ways, and defeating any enemy will send them clean into space. And it's this lighthearted tone that helps to alleviate the awkward voice deliveries of the lead character, especially considering that after the prologue, you won't really hear from this character that much. So now, let's move on to where this game truly excels, its gameplay design. Immortals is built around three fundamental aspects: exploration, combat, and player upgrades. The Golden Isle is not only large, but also feels remarkably dense, with some fantastic environmental designs coupled with interesting landmarks to discover. It's highly recommended that you climb up high structures not to trigger a cliché Ubisoft viewpoint and clear up the map, but rather just to look around and spot something that genuinely interests you. No two areas look the same, and if you really want to grow your character, you're going to want to explore every inch of this game world to find valuable items to enhance your experience further. The general movement and control should come naturally to you. You can run around, jump, sprint, and even climb. But some of these more demanding actions will consume stamina, that will require you to either rest or consume mushrooms to replenish. With the stamina system, players are free to try and climb up anything they want, assuming they've upgraded their character enough to pull it off. And the terrain is built in a way that prevents players from exploring higher level areas without ever feeling too artificial. And if you really want to explore the later game areas, you can, but you'll likely get destroyed by the enemies there. To help traverse the world faster, players can make use of a few helpful modes of transportation. You can glide through the air using Icarus's wings, or you can tame a wild animal and use it as your personal mount. And if you want to travel back to a previously discovered area, you can simply fast travel using the map. These can either be major landmarks or any discovered vaults. The vaults serve the exact same purpose as Breath of the Wild's shrines. If a player wants, they can jump into this vault and attempt to solve a series of unique puzzles, each challenging the player to make use of their acquired abilities in new ways, like navigating a boulder through a course by opening doors and raising platforms. Upon completing these vaults, players will receive bolts of Zeus's lightning, which can then be used to improve the player's stamina, making these puzzles key to progressing further in the game. But Immortals isn't all climbing and puzzle solving, there's also a fair amount of combat as well. The combat is not unlike many of the other melee-focused games lately. You can swing your sword quickly for a light, rapid attack, or press the heavy attack button to swing a large axe that's slower but can fill the enemy's stun gauge, that, when filled, will leave an enemy open for you to deal some serious damage. Players can also click down on the right joystick to lock onto any nearby enemies, and if timed properly, they can dodge an enemy's attack, causing them to move in slow motion for a few seconds, offering an opportunity to deal extra damage. On top of these basic weapons, players can also make use of Apollo's bow for ranged attacks, the bracers of Heracles to lift heavy objects and throw them at enemies, and the wings of Icarus, which help to introduce a bit of verticality to the melee combat. The enemies are composed primarily of classic Greek mythological monsters, including Gorgons, Cyclopses, Harpies, Minotaurs, and much more, and each one of them offers their own unique attack patterns that can be exploited to help defeat them. It's a mostly solid combat design, though I do feel it's a bit too forgiving, especially on the normal difficulty. The dodging in particular is extremely forgiving, and I found that as long as you press the dodge button within the enemy's attack window, you don't even actually need to get out of the way of the enemy at all, as the slow motion effect makes you essentially invincible during its duration. But this combat gets much more involved once you get to the boss fights. Then of course, we have the game's upgrade and progression system. While the main way to progress the story is by completing the main story objectives, you'll find a bulk of the game is structured around enhancing your character back at the Hall of the Gods. Here, you'll find a number of leftover tools from the gods to help improve your character. There's Zeus's bench press, that can be used to spend your found Zeus lightning bolts to upgrade your stamina, the River Styx cistern, where you can spend your found Charon coins to unlock abilities in Phoenix's skill tree, Hephaestus's forge, that can be used to upgrade your weapons and armor, Athena's Kylix, that can be used to upgrade your max health, and a few other helpful tools scattered throughout, like a chair to change your appearance or a cauldron to craft more potions. This room is essential to a player's success in this game, and you'll no doubt become very familiar with it as you uncover more of the Golden Isle. If you ever find yourself coming up short on currency, you can always accept special daily tasks from Hermes' taskboard as well, which can be used to farm more coins and jewels, though these resources seem plentiful enough that I never felt the need to use this. Immortals does offer microtransactions, however, thankfully these appear to only be cosmetic based at the time being, with no way to enhance your player's power or abilities other than just playing through the game itself. And for players looking for more content after they finish the main campaign, Ubisoft has confirmed that additional paid DLC expansions will come to the game in the future. Finally, we have the visual design. This is another aspect that I think Immortals does a fantastic job with. The entire game is built with a cartoony, painted aesthetic, with extremely exaggerated color tones and stylized environments. And it for the most part looks great. Grassy fields are loaded with dynamic grass effects that blow in the wind and react to the player. And the time of day smoothly passes with some fantastic global illumination effects and volumetrics. The most impressive feature though is the draw distance. Standing above large vistas reveals a hugely diverse scene with lots of different objects visible at extreme distances, with practically no slowdowns on any of the systems that I tested. The only downside to the visual design are the character models. They're almost too simplistic, and they feel out of place in the environment, with some subpar shadowing and weirdly unnatural facial features that makes them appear like big-eyed Disney princesses. And customizing the character to make them look better doesn't seem to help much due to the limited available choices. Some of these cosmetic choices don't even seem to fit the character properly, like these beards that look like they were just pasted on. On both the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, the game maintains a solid 60 frames per second in its performance mode, with what seems to be a dynamic 4K resolution. And on PC, the game runs even smoother, with extended draw distances and superior texture quality. What's more, if you have multiple platforms that you like to play on, you can easily transfer your saves between them using Ubi Connect, that I was able to use to transfer my saves between all three platforms that I tested this game on. Overall, Immortals Fenyx Rising is a surprisingly good game. When I first saw the ads for this game back when it was first called Gods and Monsters, I really didn't think much of it, especially after having just exhausted my interest in ancient Greek culture after trekking through Assassin's Creed Odyssey. But Fenyx Rising isn't just a rehash of Odyssey with a cartoony art style. This is a game that offers something entirely different from Ubisoft's other titles in its portfolio, as the world is genuinely interesting to explore. And you never feel like you're being pressured to just clean up a map with some obnoxious side quests. Instead, this experience feels like a mythological playground, with some nicely executed gameplay mechanics and a confident art style that delivers a genuinely polished experience. But it's not perfect, as the game's story is most definitely an area that hurts the overall appeal. I love the banter between Zeus and Prometheus, as I feel that's a pretty clever pairing, but the lead character just isn't likable. In fact, he's kind of annoying, and I can definitely see it turning off some gamers from appreciating all this game has to offer. What's more, Fenyx Rising is not necessarily original either. It's almost shocking how much it borrows from Breath of the Wild, and I'll be sure to cover that in an upcoming direct comparison later this week. But until then, what do you guys think? Are you interested in trying out Immortals Fenyx Rising? Let me know in the comments section. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more next-gen coverage posted every week.